Culver Road, you're outside the limits. If you're going past Meadowview Drive over in Phoenix Hills, you're outside the limits. You're going past the last, not apartment complex, but mobile home park, Creekside Apartments, down on PC, down 99, you're outside the limits. If you're past the old 7-Eleven, you're outside our limits, okay? A little bit of confusion last time. With that said, I'm gonna have Jim Thompson come up and you get 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you. Jim Thompson, 255 Culver Road in Talent.
All right,
Let me put my specs on here.
okay?
I just have a brief statement, Your Honor. Mayor of Phoenix, members of Phoenix City Council. As a citizen of Talent, I am on the Together for Talent Committee, B-City USA Subcommittee, and IPM Subcommittee. As Phoenix continues to grow, more citizens grow with it. The children in Phoenix also grow along with the changing times and will be adjusting to increasing use of controversial products in schools, public grounds, and parks. You may want to consider establishing policies that offer more scrutiny of controversial pesticides and herbicides that have accumulated in the Rogue Valley soil biomes. These accumulating residues may ultimately be in conflict with the health of your community. We all have a duty to address our environmental health, safety, and quality of life, not just for pollinators, other wildlife, domestic pets, environmental spaces, and our heritage, but all citizens of the Rogue Valley and hopefully beyond. I encourage you to take the initiative that other Rogue Valley communities are taking by adopting more organic and sustainable integrated pest management policies. Talent has already begun a more responsible, sustainable, and robust stewardship of its place in the Rogue Valley with its own IPM, recently approved by the City Council and implemented by Public Works. It is trusted and hoped that Phoenix will perhaps also set a precedent with a good template by which you can become better managers of your environment, setting an example of informed practices, building a better future, and leaving a sound legacy for coming generations. In Talent, with our investments in an IPM through education and action, it is vital to our goals and trust in our children to continue to be the only asset we truly have for a future for humanity and the biosphere. It is understood that current endeavors by city management, staff, and departments to conduct sound practices will demonstrate that they stand ready to do an even better job of managing investments in the city of Phoenix. I urge you to explore the Non-Toxic Irvine NTI website for a great example of how communities can lead in working toward more environmentally friendly and sustainable practices. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And Rihanna Sines. Is it Rihanna or Rihanna?
Thank you for asking. My name's Rihanna Sims. I live at 4283 Culver Road in Phoenix. I'm technically in the county. I'm serving as a volunteer on the City of Phoenix Parks Commission, and I'm here today to share my continued concern about the safety of Phoenix parks. As you know, this weekend was beautiful here. The sun was out and many families were enjoying time in our parks. However, my concern is related to the fact that the City of Phoenix spray records showed that in the past, both Culver Park and Blue Heron Park were sprayed with herbicides the first week of March. In the past. This means that over the past several years, unsuspecting families go to the park on these precious sunny days and are unknowingly being exposed to herbicides. I'm concerned about the health and the well-being of everyone in Phoenix. I've been asked a couple of times by Phoenix residents who have said that they think that I have an agenda joining the Parks Commission. And this is true. I do have an agenda. And that is to see my town, the place where I'm raising my children, have clean and safe parks. That is my agenda. I want my daughter, Hazel, and my little son, Rowan, to be able to play in the grass without concern, to swing and enjoy the playground as children do, free from the fear of secondary exposure to a pesticide that we don't even know is there. Now that the spray records have been reviewed, it's clear that herbicides have been used in our parks in the past, and they're continuing to be used today. It's not enough to have a narrative of we don't use much or we only use a little. The narrative is meaningless when you think about in 2017, Both Culver Park and Blue Heron Park were sprayed with herbicides on March 2nd. That would have been this last weekend. In 2018, they waited until March 12th. However, herbicides were still sprayed in the parks in the spring when families are going to the parks. My concern is rooted in the dynamic that when children walk, sit, or play in these areas that have been sprayed, they don't know, and neither do their parents. The kids play there, and then those chemicals are on their hands. Then they eat lunch, they touch their eyes, the chemicals are on their shoes. They go home and track those chemicals into the carpets, on the rugs, on the couch. These are secondary points of contact that add up over time because of the frequent and repeated exposure. This happens with pets and children, and it's preventable. The park's master plan encourages the city of Phoenix to reduce toxic inputs and create clean and safe parks for Phoenix. And I really encourage the city council to continue to hear the concerns of the citizens and to take these points into concern and into consideration as you're planning doing the strategic planning and as you're looking at the Parks Commission moving forward. Because again, this is something that affects all of us. And so thank you for your time tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I don't normally comment on public comment, but just one thing to reassure people. I'll get you in a minute. We are posting now when sprayings are occurring, and Ray and the Public Works Department have arranged for that to happen. Just let people know. You're welcome. Yes, sir. Do you want to speak on something that's not on the
I
agenda?
would like to speak if I could. I didn't get the sign sheet.
Okay, that's fine. Is it something not on the agenda?
What was that?
Do you want to speak about something not on our agenda?
I'm just going to make a comment about an agenda item.
Well, you can wait until the agenda item comes up, and then you can comment on it. We've only got really two agenda items. One is the fire mitigation, and two is the TSP plan. Did you want to comment on one of those items?
TSP.
Okay, you can have a seat, and we're going to call you up when we start talking about the TSP. It'll be a few minutes, okay? Thank you, sir. Right now, we're just talking about things that are not on the agenda, but we'll get to you. All right. Next item up is a pretty full consent agenda calendar. Is there anything that anybody wants to pull from the consent agenda? And I do want to remind people that you can still vote on minutes, even though you weren't at a meeting. As long as you've read the minutes, you can vote to approve minutes, okay? Anybody want to pull anything from the consent agenda? Okay. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move to accept the consent agenda as written and presented.
Second.
Any more discussion?
I just want to make sure that the people who applied for committee positions understand that that means that you're going to get appointed. So that you don't have to sit through an entire meeting if you don't want to.
You're in.
You can.
You're in.
Welcome to.
And thank you for volunteering, we appreciate it. All right.
Whatever vote is.
What's that?
Did we vote?
We didn't. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the consent agenda is passed unanimously.
Now you're in.
Thank you.
Now you're.
All right. Next item up is item 8A, is discussion authorizing expenditures of funds to mitigate fire danger. I asked this to be put on the agenda, just in case we need to tap into funds to mitigate some of the fuel that's on land bordering the city. Most notably, the land in back of Arena Drive, at the end of Daniel Drive. It's the helicopter pad, 41 acres. And what I'd like to see happen is that we have a cooperative agreement amongst the railroad, the county, and the city to mitigate the fire danger over there. It's a huge concern to me. Last year I was worried sick day after day, seeing the weeds out there at 6 feet high, transient camping going on out there, and the real possibility, I thought, of a fire moving from that area, I know some of you have been out there and taken a look at it, moving from that area, jumping the railroad tracks, hitting the fuel along the older wooden fences that separate homes on Arena Drive, and then going into the yards and going into homes and potentially taking homes and also lives. Of special concern is the Rose Court Apartments to me. When you go to the Rose Court Apartments, those apartments are designed for people who have challenges mentally and physically. There's people in those apartments who are in wheelchairs, they're paraplegics, there's blind people there. There are mentally disabled people. People in those apartments can't just, in about a couple seconds, get in the car and take off. And I was out there with Angie earlier, and we took a look at the property, and it just reminds me that this fuel is almost right on top of these homes, and the Rose Court Apartments. And in my mind, it's gonna be taken care of. It's, to me, after going back to 2 lanes on Main Street, the biggest item we have here in the city. There's a couple other properties around the city I think need some attention, but the one over at the helicopter pad is the biggest one in my mind. I don't wanna look back and have something happen, and then our city council, someone says, hey, why didn't you do something? You're gonna do something when you do something before the fire season starts. When you look at the area, it's not just, right now, the high grass is not there, but there are a lot of dead trees and dead debris. It's really building up. And I just wanna put on the agenda for discussion, entertain comments.
I don't know, I feel like, I went out there and looked at that with you last fall or last summer. What bothered me was all the fire pits from the transits. I don't have anything against transits per se, but that was right after the Pinninger fire where one of them actually burned to death. He didn't die of asphyxiation, he actually burned to death. The thought of that is horrible to me. What do you have in mind for fire abatement? I mean, is it transient removal? Is it vegetation reduction? What do you got in mind?
What I have in mind is doing the same thing we did last year. We got permission from the county to go out there and remove the transients who were camping out there. And Terry's right, there are fire pits,
The fire pits is what bothered me in August. I thought that was particularly,
and there's cigarette butts out there, there's Coleman stoves, there's Coleman stove fluid containers out there. It's really, in my mind, scary. So what I have in mind is to hire a company that goes out there and does a line of land, or takes care of a line of land that doesn't have those fuels on it. I walked the area with the fire chief, and he said it could use really a 50-foot barrier between the fencing and the land where the fire might start, to give the fire department a fighting chance. So what I envision, first of all, is sending a letter to the county asking them to do it. I envision sending a letter to the railroad saying, hey, you guys need to take care of your right-of-way and clear off the debris. And then if that doesn't work, and we have to chip in, and may do it ourselves, I think we have to make that move. So I'm hoping we get some cooperation by the different entities, railroad and county, but if they don't wanna step up, we gotta do something. If it comes to,
I wonder if we could get a wildland fire company, like Timberland or something like that, that fights wildland fires, and in their off-season, which is right now, to come and give us an estimate. What if they could give us a 50-foot buffer? What would that cost? And then if we had a 50-foot buffer, that would be enough. We wouldn't have to deal with the transits. They could go 50 feet back, and we would have that. 50 foot's a good buffer.
well, the transient problem still has to be dealt with. I don't wanna see one transient campsite out there lighting fires.
Well, I don't either, but I'm just saying for this immediate danger, for the immediacy, to get an idea of what it's gonna cost. We're if we decide to go after that, that's gonna fall short of what we need to accomplish. I get what you're saying, and I'm not disagreeing. I'm saying that it's gonna fall short of what we wanna accomplish. What we need to accomplish is a safety barrier.
Fire break.
And having fought wildland fires myself, I know that would be a huge help. It would be a huge help. And, if they could just take it down, just take, they got all the tools, they got the people, they got the know-how.
Yeah. And I did walk the area with Aaron and also one of the commissioners, Commissioner Strasser. And I think it's pretty straightforward. A lot of the stuff out there is small in diameter, it's bushes, it's weeds. There are some bigger trees, but I don't see it as a monumental effort of clear cutting a forest.
Well, it's not,
Yeah.
real quick. It's not, that's why I say if we had an estimate,
Yeah.
how much would you guys charge us?
Mhm.
And then we talk about that.
Right.
Sarah, that's what
Go ahead.
Oh, and those are the bulk of my questions. I know that, you know, folks have lots of concerns about the fires. I did look through, I had some time to do research today, so, I went through our, emergency management plan for Phoenix, and there is a whole provision on there on wildfires, so we are well prepared there. I also, you know, curious, so a lot of the property that we're talking about county property. Is it county and private, or is it some of it in Phoenix?
It's the most, I think, the highest danger area is the county property. But there's also a danger area as you drive down Lumen Road and you're going into Bear Lake Estates. There is some land owned there that has quite a bit of debris that does come very close to the homes in Bear Lake Estates. If a fire happens there, there's only one way out, you know, going down Lumen Road. In back of, if you go down Camp Baker Road, there's some areas that do back into a couple of, Huntley and some other streets that come off of Hillsinger. But it's not as bad. There's a little bit of debris out there, but there's one farmer that keeps it down pretty good, but another one that's not doing as good of a job as I think he could. Those are only the 3 properties I know of that are of major concern to me.
I have one more.
So-
Where,
oh,
I'm sorry, where Colwood Creek goes under South Civic Highway, if you're walking, and you probably walked this a number of times, you walk past the Jack in the Box,
Yeah.
and you go, there's a chain link fence and all
Oh,
that
yeah,
area.
where it's this big.
That is like a tinderbox waiting to blow up.
Mm.
It is waiting, and if it went up, you've got all along Rose Street and all down behind, on Cheryl Lane, the huge fire danger.
It's pretty green though in the summertime, but I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
So I had a little bit more too. I guess, I'm okay with, you know, asking the county and asking the railway to do their fair share and make sure that they're cleaning up the property. Though I think that we would need to come back and have a discussion as a council if it's something that we're talking about making an ongoing cost for the city. Because we don't have that budgeted for, we'd need to have a conversation about that. You know, I know that there's concern, but it seems, we're doing fire remediation stuff on the Greenway, and it seems like that would also be like an important place to focus or to concentrate our focus. I actually, I came across this, it's a 2017 Jackson County Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan, which is quite the title. I think that, so I saw that you, Mr. Mayor, and Dave Canner, and a few other, Ray, and Chief, were you there too? I think. Anyway, it was a regional discussion on Jackson County's like
Right.
emergency preparedness plan. And it was interesting that the way that they had ranked things, I think that, you know, fire is always a concern, but I think it should help people feel a little bit more comfortable. I would hope that they rank the natural disasters in kind of like order of what's most severe and what we need to plan around the most. Our number 1 is the Cascadia earthquake. So that's the number 1 thing that they say Phoenix needs to plan for. Number 7 is wildfire. Because they say that there's not, you know, we're not like paradise in California where there's a lot of, you know, trees around that can cause a lot of loss of life. And then just for perspective, number 10 is volcano. So it goes from earthquake to wildfire to volcano.
And I think flooding's in there also in case a dam breaks or something.
Right. So based on that assessment and based on some of the facts, I think that, you know, it's always good to be prepared, but I think that we're in a better position in Phoenix than many other communities. In fact, the report says we're better than most of the rest of the county.
Okay, but I still don't want to take that as as saying we don't need to act immediately to help mitigate the chance of fire hitting our city. We've had quite a few fires set by transients along the Greenway.
Along
We
the
had
green.
Reading, I mean, who would think that a big chunk of Reading's gonna go up in flames? So I think that we still need to need to act before the fire season hits on a couple of areas.
Yeah, and I'm not necessarily disagreeing, so two things I
Okay.
think would be great to happen is one, reach out to the people who actually own the properties.
Yes.
So they're not the city of Phoenix, so is it responsible for the city of Phoenix to use our money? Maybe, but I think that we should reach out to the people who own the property first, come back to the council and have a conversation about adding that to the budget. We need to be good about making sure things are in our budget and that we're living within our means as a city.
Well, the problem we have is the budget doesn't start until July 1st. That's too late. We need to act before the budget cycle. We need to act on this now and going into the springtime. We can't wait till July 1st to make this happen. It has to be done before that point. So what I'm looking at doing is going into even contingency funds, if we have to mitigate the fire danger. We can't wait to next budget cycle. That's too late.
So is it, I guess, going to become an ongoing cost for the city? Are we willing to like set that precedent for saying, yes, it's our responsibility and we're gonna do this? So those are some of the questions I have, and
Yeah.
just from a, financial perspective, like, are those things that we're going to do?
And if you're directing the question to me, I would say.
Just broadly to the council, are those things that we're going to create like as an ongoing cost, or are we gonna hold private property owners and the county responsible?
I think
for
we
their
try
share?
our darndest to make the county responsible and the railroad responsible for taking care of the problem and not having us bear that responsibility in the financial burden. But if push comes to shove and we're not gonna do anything, we still have to do something and mitigate that fire danger. The first year is gonna be a lot more expensive than the years after that. There's a lot of older trees, larger bushes that are dead. After it's all cleared out, I think year number 2 is gonna be much easier to take care of, much less expensive. And we used to go out there, and we used to go out there, we used to actually, the city owned the property till last year. We used to go out there and mow the lawns out there and take care of it. I wish the county would do the same thing. But yeah, if the county's not gonna step up, we need to do it. And an ongoing sum of money in the budget to take care of fire preparation and eliminate the dangers, I think is prudent. Chief, you wanted to say something? Come on up.
Just a little background on that property. When I arrived here is right about the time the city took it over.
Yep.
I believe the second year, there was a major fire out there. Came very close to the Urana Drive homes. And from that point on, and I don't know what the cost would be, but that would be a Ray question. From that point on, in early May, the city Public Works went out and mowed, and I think even one year they plowed it, which worked well, and then they did it again in early August. They would mow it twice a year. And I don't think I don't think you have to necessarily take out the big trees and bushes. That's not the issue. The issue is the weeds that grow 6 feet tall and turn black. But I don't know what the cost of doing that is. So, it's, what is it, 10 acres?
It's 31 acres.
31
in
acres.
total, but we didn't mow the whole thing. We mowed the grassy areas. There's some areas
Right.
with trees, tall bushes. But if you look, there's like a 50-foot, 60, 70-foot line between the homes and that property where there's a lot of dead trees and dead bushes. If those were cut down one time, I think they would hopefully stay down for quite a few years. I hear you're saying we did used to do that.
Do you remember
Right.
what year that was, Chief, so we can?
I would say it was would have been the summer of '06, so the fire probably would have been in '07.
Okay. That'd be great to look up so we could get an estimate. Thanks, Chief.
I was on a Rainier Drive day talking to one of the neighbors. They said not 20 years ago, the flames were coming up and back of this guy named Wayne's house. And it was a very scary situation.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't recommend plowing the entire property since
Right.
we don't really control it anymore. And that's really the county's opportunity to maintain. I do think that the idea of creating a band of removal along the railroad tracks is ultra important because you can't stop those wildfires. Once the wind gets going, it's very clear, even in Central Point from their fire last year, that, you know, you're not gonna stop it with even a small band. So knocking down the blackberry propagation is also important because, you know, you see part of the blackberry bush, but you don't realize that those things can run 20 feet till they get down to their base and their root area. And their base and their root area continue to hold heat and smolder, which is what happened actually in Central Point for quite a few days. So the flame retardant that they put on there was really what saved them from a reignition of that fire, in my opinion. To be a little bit careful with the interpretation of the hazard mitigation plan. One of the reasons that the Cascadia event is listed so high is because you can't do anything to prevent that. There aren't any preventative measures for an earthquake. There aren't going to be any preventative measures for an Emigrant Lake dam removal or something of that nature. So with respect to the hazards that you can control, we can't do anything about landslides. That's another one that's prevalent here because of not only Ammerman, but also over on the east side where the water tank is. So there are certain inherent risks in the environment that we can't really control. Hazard mitigation, though, is one of them we can. And so I could probably assume that you could get a community justice crew with the county's heavier equipment, larger equipment, to create a swath of clearance there. I think they're running about $1,200 a day. Well, it depends on how big the crew is, but
Yeah, I think even less.
you get a
like
crew for
500.
about $1,200 a day, approximately, and you could dial up and down your support depending upon how much money you have available. I agree with the mayor. You could probably do it on a biannual, or maybe even every 3 years, and do an evaluation of what grows back, how quickly it grows back. But I don't think you'd have to do it every single year to maintain a protective band along the railroad. I will say that we've been very successful in the past year in getting the fire department out, the railroad out, especially around our shop. If you notice, we've done an awful lot of work around our shop perimeter for the same exact reason, to get the fire fuel down. And they have done an extensive amount of tree trimming and cutting along our common property boundary. So they are responding a little bit better than they have in the past, but it really has to be a situation at the shop, since we have the tanks there. That's a federally controlled, secure facility, so I use that as kind of the hammer. So, but they have been somewhat more responsive than we've seen them in the past.
Yeah, thank you. And just for the record, in case an article is written, I do want to thank the county for all they did with us last year. There was, they did hire a railroad and the county worked together to hire a crew to do some weed whacking and some mitigation. I had arranged for the fire department to be there just in case a spark started a fire, but once the fire department was arranged to be there, they came out and really assisted us and helped us with the transit issue also. Okay. But again, I'm looking forward to a number of steps. One, we contact the railroad. Two, the county. And then if they're not gonna do anything, then we need to take money from contingency. And I was thinking about a number of $10,000 as a start. I don't think it'll cost more than that, but that was my idea. Council.
I would like to ask our opinion of our legal counsel. It sounds to me like what we're proposing here is in some cases taking unilateral action. And what are the implications of doing that on private property and county property? And then what are the recourses we have if they don't do anything? I'm looking at it from a legal standpoint, not getting sued by somebody for cutting grass when we're not supposed to be cutting on their property.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to be able to go onto someone's private property and start cutting the grass down unless they give you permission to do that. The county, and the county's not going to permit you to do that either unless they give you permission. I mean, I suppose you could, create a nuisance, or you could file a nuisance claim against them and then seek a court order for them to do it, but I don't think you want to get in that kind of position with the county. And the fact that you don't have any, you can't enforce your own code outside of your own city, and I know that I've dealt with this question before, and there, depending on what your fire department or your fire district is capable of doing. That is that like any law enforcement officer, they do have authority that goes outside of their outside of their jurisdiction, or they have a general jurisdiction and be able to go throughout. Obviously, there's agreements between cities as to whether or not, one city goes into another city and starts arresting people, they talk to each other as a general rule before they start making it, a habit of it, if they know they have something going on there. But, but there is, if you had a fire marshal, for instance, that was aware that there was in fact an issue outside of its borders, you could theoretically go out there and ticket someone if it was a state law violation. But I'm not aware of any state law violations related to overgrown grasses or fire hazards. Those are normally ordinances that are provided for by cities. And the only other thing I know of the county is it's got its own solid waste. And again, you could use its provisions, but it would be the county that would enforce those rules unless you were trying to force the county to do it. But you can't go onto someone's property without their permission.
Yes, sir.
I just want to say, we do have a very good relationship with the county, with the commissioners and with the county administrator. Last year, we did talk to the county administrator as well as at least one or more commissioners. And we were given permission to take care of some of that brush and whatnot. But there's a cost associated with it. And I think that bottom line, that's kind of what the mayor is getting at is, certainly we want to talk to the railroad and we want to talk to the county, but ultimately, if they aren't acting, does the council want to expend city funds to take care of that?
Yeah, and what you might be able to do, and I haven't talked with anyone at the county or any property owner, for instance, that if it was a solid waste issue, or I'd have to again look, I don't think it is, but if there was some kind of nuisance danger that's involved there, the county doesn't want that to be there. You might be able to parlay an agreement with them. That is that with the matching funds, you would get them to come out with their crew from the jail or something, and you pay half of it, and they'll pay half of it, and more likely come out. So there may be some terms that you could reduce the cost that would otherwise be associated with something like that. I can't imagine it really being that expensive once you got into a regular habit of mowing the grass out there.
That was the other part of the question I was going to come up with. Do we need an intergovernmental agreement with the county and a memorandum of understanding or something else with the private property owners for cost sharing, or maybe we pay for it and then bill them and they reimburse us, those sort of things?
Yeah, I would be advising to have some form of agreement. What that agreement is, could be an intergovernmental agreement or memorandum of understanding, but I would rather it be an intergovernmental agreement or an agreement itself to ensure that it's some kind of, or you could get a fire break easement, so it allows you to go onto their property. That would be the more likely scenario, I think. There's plenty of those out there for development of your property. So that,
Okay.
you do it.
It seems the formality might be a good thing, then you have permission.
Oh, yes, you'd want that.
And
Yeah,
you
right.
can do cost sharing and whatever. Okay.
You don't want to be out there with your Toro going up and down someone's property. They come out and, what are you doing?
I do think the county would cooperate when I was.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it.
Whatever. But I propose sending a letter over to Denny Jordan, the three commissioners I talked to, two of the commissioners, one a little bit about the problem, and then, I'd send a letter out to the commissioners and Denny Jordan, and Councilor Vermillion mentioned maybe include a letter from the fire chief. If I walk their property with, I think it's a decent idea.
Well, the county has a property manager, and so you would probably be in contact with their property manager.
Right.
I would think. If they own, they have a whole number of foreclosed properties and other kinds of properties that they have to, that they have liability for. And if it is a liability to them, then that's something they would need to address, because they're a property owner.
I think this one here is a bit unique. Well, when you go to the property map for Jackson County, you start clicking around the properties that border other cities. I couldn't see a lot of Jackson County properties that were bordering other cities. The claim by the county is that there's so many properties that they own, they can never mitigate the fire danger in all the properties. But I think this one has some unique aspects that we could talk to in a letter. Stuart?
So I just went to a training on Thursday about wildfire and drinking water and how it would impact us basically, in Phoenix and the Rogue Valley. And I kind of left with some bigger questions, I think, for how we are mitigating for these hazards. So just wondering if it's an appropriate time to bring up those questions too. It's mostly about like our water storage capacity and how we maintain those facilities.
I don't know that I'm prepared to answer those questions, and it's outside the scope of this agenda item.
Well, I'm wondering if we're going to talk about doing some hazardous fuel mitigation in one certain area, why not kind of do it around the whole city as well, especially to protect, our more, important assets.
Well, I can speak that a little bit, but when you look on I've gone around the perimeter of the property. For example, at the end of Phoenix Hills, there's farmland that's tilled. When you go on the other side of Phoenix Hills, up toward the mountain, there is a irrigation canal, and there is a natural fire break there, and the grass there is not that bad. If the fire would go up the hill, I think they're okay. When you come down around the other part of the city, near Jim's place, the hills, it's all cut low, there's business there, it's not a problem. But I've gone through around the entire perimeter of the city, and I think I've outlined the problem areas being down Camp Baker Road. There's some along the Greenway too. If you go along the Greenway, there are some fairly dry areas in fire season that do come fairly close to a couple of mobile home parks that are in the city. But those are the only areas I could see. To take a walk around the perimeter and check it out. There aren't that many properties that are in bad shape.
I have a feeling that Ray might be able to answer this question a little bit more clearly.
Sure. Maybe you could clarify for me what you meant in terms of the water source? And there's not much we can do about the water source.
Sure, but like our storage capacity, our storage tanks.
Storage tanks are in good shape.
Good shape.
Fairly well controlled. There's not a lot of, quite frankly, the fire breaks and the maintenance we do around them are fairly workable in terms of protecting them. You talk about a fire taking over a tank. Is that what
Potentially tank or shutting down, different power line sources.
No, I'm not too, the tanks don't, the tank up on the east side reservoir doesn't actually have a power source to it. It's a gravity feed, and all the electronics and the pumping mechanisms are all down in the valley. Out at the shop, that's why we did clearing all the way around. We've redone a lot of the fencing and cleared up a lot of the detritus that was between the fence and the railroad tracks and around the perimeter of the site there. So I think we're in pretty good shape there. And so the facilities themselves are I think well protected. If you were talking about drinking water sources, that's a different animal. That's more of a regional issue associated with where Medford Water gets their water sources from. That's one of the reasons why under the Water System Master Plan we're investigating the opportunity to work with Talent and Ashland on a Talent Ashland Phoenix Master Plan that would potentially provide us with a different secondary source if necessary.
How much capacity do we have, if you don't mind me asking? I know it's getting off the topic a little bit, but since we got them up there, we have capacity for storage. How many days would that last us?
And fire under summer conditions and emergency restrictions, we could probably work 2 days. About 1.5, 2 days.
Okay.
We would have to force restrictions on usage, obviously.
Yeah.
In the summertime when you would expect there to be a problem, that's, no irrigation, no pools, everybody on reduced water usage.
That's assuming the tap was shut off, though.
Yeah, that assumes we don't have any incoming water.
Yeah. And we have those curtailment plans in place. Good man. All right, thank you.
You got any questions? Are you okay?
Good.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? So would the council be okay with having our city manager contact the railroad, send a letter to the county can't get cooperation.
How about if we did it where the city manager contacted those agencies and found out what our options are? And then we find out how much money it's gonna cost and then figure out how much to dedicate that way.
Sure.
I'd like to add also to investigate, getting some kind of formal agreement with them for property access from our standpoint as a secondary thing, primarily get them to do, I'll consider it their job, so to speak, to do the cutting themselves at their own expense.
You're gonna be busy.
The agreement part is a piece of cake compared to the rest of it.
There are some private property owners around the perimeter of the city, and I've asked Aaron to try to contact them to see if they'll be a good neighbor and take care of the problem on their own property. See what happens.
So what I'm hearing is that you want me to come back to the council with an estimate for what it would cost. You want me to contact the agencies and an estimate for what it would cost to do a 50-foot fire break.
But it also sounds like there's private property owners that we haven't talked about that need to be contacted and talked to them, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And if we don't have an ordinance that addresses those tall weeds, then we can talk about that as well.
Let's talk about that.
But by the way, Kelly Matting, who's formerly the county with Medford, now with Ashland, she's their city administrator, she's trying to work out some kind of deal with the county whereby there would be an automatic buffer to mitigate the fire danger. I'm not sure how long she is along in the process, but she's gonna work out some kind of agreement. Okay. Give enough direction?
Good enough? Yeah, I got it.
Great, thank you. All right. Next up on the agenda is the second reading and public hearing of ordinance number 1000, an ordinance of the City of Phoenix adopting amendments to the Transportation System Plan and Chapter 3.5 of the Land Development Code. I know you'd like to speak on it, but we're gonna have our, did you want me to have it, Glenn? Okay.
Absolutely, yeah. Our planning director.
Yeah, we're gonna have a public hearing also in a few minutes.
Evening, everybody. Evan McKenzie, Planning Director. There's not much to note beyond what we discussed at the last meeting. The meat of this is really amending the description for projects B4 and B5 in the TSP that takes away the language that commits us to one lane and one lane only on Main Street inside the couplet. Outside of that, all of the changes are basically housekeeping, simply to correct for some things that have changed or happened or not happened since this was adopted. No real changes. So really, it's just taking away the limit on doing one lane on Main Street southbound. This is not a design exercise. We are not actually doing the street with this. We are only establishing the spec. That's it. Any questions?
We talked earlier about the red marks, and they just clarified they're not going to be in the final document.
That is correct. And so there was one change noted and requested by you at the last meeting. That has been removed from the master copy, but because so much additional work will be required to clean this up after everything comes out, I did not bring you a new copy. Didn't really see the point.
Any other comments, questions?
A quick one. I know we're not talking about configurations
Yes.
today. So we're not talking about road configurations, just so everybody knows. What will the process for that look like moving forward?
Really, we'll just have to come up with a design. Something tells me that design will be a two-lane design. And then we just need to go basically block by block and look for issues that need site-specific attention, much like we did on Church Street.
Will that be, I know that the TSP, updating the TSP so that we could even consider a two-lane configuration, because we couldn't, was updated by the Planning Commission. So will configuration go to the Planning Commission first, or would that be your
It
understanding
doesn't,
of it?
have to unless the council wants us to have them look at it.
Okay,
Otherwise, no.
okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions for staff? Okay. Well, I'm going to open up the public hearing. For ordinance number 1,000, ordinance of the City of Phoenix adopting amendments to the Transportation System Plan and Chapter 3.5 of the Land Development Code. With that said, I know we have one resident that would like to speak about the TSP plan, and come on up. That's you.
I'm it.
Yep, you're it. I think you're the only one.
My name's Randy Jones. I'm with Mahar Homes, offices at 815 Alder Creek Drive in Medford. In kind of a unique position, I'm here to support the TSP in this resolution. I'm very interested in you and how you're taking care of some things, an experiment that kind of didn't work, and how you're taking it on and going to try and come up with some solutions. So appreciate that. I wasn't aware, I guess I'm not on the mailing list, but I'd like to get on the mailing list. So anything that has to do with transportation and UGB here in Phoenix, I'm very interested. I represent, we have ownership control of all of the Arrowhead Ranch holdings now. We just purchased the stuff on the east side of west side of North Phoenix Road, so we control it all. This is kind of the wheelhouse we work in. I was reflecting back in 1972, Terry, you haven't changed too much, you got a little heavier, but back in 1972, he was in my first fourth grade class as a 9-year-old. So thank you thank you for giving back to the community, and I mean that sincerely. I think we all should. But for the last 45 years, I've been in the real estate development business, and we're used to doing a little bit larger, more complicated projects, and we're looking forward to doing it here. Our unique position is we have quite a bit of the land on Medford's UGB side too, and the stuff that goes out to where South Stage overcrossing will some go, and then future interchange, and that will take pressure off of Phoenix's interchange someday. But we really want to be part of your Tier 2 unfunded projects, especially involving PH 5 and 10. I'm in negotiations for some of the land inside off Fern Valley Road for that residential entry in, and that's where services ultimately will first come from. They'll have to do that versus off in North Phoenix. And I've been working on the water, how you're going to water it, because the water system right now in Phoenix will not serve that area. It won't even be close. But I've been working with engineers in Medford Water, and we'll work with your engineers, your contract engineers on that. The circulation plan, we really want to be a big part of that. We know where higher order roads probably should go. We're working with the county and the state on that now, and we have been working with Ray on that, but we want to continue to do that. And then sanitary sewer, we discovered some unique things involving that, and there will be cooperation with Rogue Valley Sewer and Medford on that to try and put in as much gravity sewer as possible without these very expensive pump stations that may have to go. So looking forward to more communication, very supportive of this ordinance you're passing.
Thank you, Randy. If you give your email address to Evan McKenzie, I think he can put you on the list that you requested, and he's the one sitting at the very end over there.
I'll do that.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Great. Thank you very much.
Oh, I did have one comment on your last conversation. Being a former school teacher, and Terry will know back in the day, City of Medford and Medford Schools had some property they didn't know what to do with and all. It was a berry patch, and hobos kind of hung out in it and all that sort of stuff. So I just went to the school district and the city, and I says, let's take these little wild hooligans I got in the classroom, the Terry Baker types, and let's do an outdoor ed program. And we did that, and we cleaned it up and made trails. We did nature type things. And then beyond that, another suggestion for you is possibly there's a guy that brings goats in, and I brought him in to chew up some of that stuff, and it's kind of fun. And you might go to your school district and see if they got some junior high kids that want to get out there, an environmental science teacher, an ag teacher or something, and it'd be a good project. Anyway, just an idea. Just an idea.
All right, thank you, Randy. Appreciate it. Is there anybody else that wants to speak with regards to ordinance number 1,000? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing, ordinance 1,000. And again, open up to council discussion regarding the ordinance. Any more discussion, guys? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Oh, before they do that, I would like to express my appreciation to Evan for putting up with all of my Spanish inquisitions over the previous meetings about this. Thank you, good job. Okay.
Okay, cool. Okay, do you want to read a motion?
I will read a motion. I move approval of second reading of ordinance number 1,000, an ordinance of the City of Phoenix to amend the Transportation Safety Systems Plan and Chapter 3.5 of the Land Development Code.
Second.
Thank you, Angie. Any more discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Council Warren?
Yes.
Council Schneider?
Yes.
Council Westover?
Yeah.
Council Baker?
Yes.
Council DeWilliams?
Yes.
Council Crawford?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Our city manager, Aaron, has asked me to, even though we passed we all agreed back on April 16, 2018 as a council to go back to 2 lanes, Aaron wants to get council okay to continue on with going back to 2 lanes, given the fact that we just passed a TSP, given the fact that we have 2 new city councilors on board.
I want staff, I'm sorry, I want council direction to
Yep.
move forward with a 2-lane configuration, a design
Yep.
for a 2-lane configuration. It's now in the TSP,
Yep.
and I want to hear from the current council that that's the direction that you want to move. That you want staff to dedicate resources and move forward with that design.
Yep.
And I just need consensus.
I hear overwhelming support from the people who live here that still want the 2 lanes. So did I jump in too early?
No, you're good. Good.
I still get I hear a lot of people say it. And I'm here to represent them, and I think we should go to 2 lanes.
Great, I see a lot of head nods, so we'll go ahead and move forward.
Will we see multiple configurations, like we did? So there's different ways to do 2 lanes. Are we gonna see different configurations?
I'm sorry, our planning director can speak.
Great.
Ray may want to speak also. With the dimensions we have for the lanes and the bike lane, I don't think there are alternatives.
Oh, there's just
I mean,
one.
there's one thing that'll fit. And so, we do have the wider blocks where we do have that extra space, and we will probably have some options there, but on the narrower blocks, we probably will have no options. There will be just the one. And I do want to remind the council that, first, because we had testimony, there is an appeal period. And so hopefully we can get a notice of the decision out tomorrow, possibly. And so there is an appeal period of 2 weeks. I don't think the single person that provided testimony will appeal to LUBA, so I don't think there is any fear of an appeal from anybody locally. However, do bear in mind that DLCD and ODOT still have a right to object. At this point, I don't think they will. The impacts are very small, but just be aware. This whole thing that was a real pain in the rear for all of us to get to this point, hopefully will make the rest of this go smoother, but I cannot guarantee that. So,
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Evan.
but we will work on it.
Okay. So we have consensus?
Yep,
You're
we're good.
okay? Okay, great, thank you. Moving pretty quick tonight, huh? Going good. So next up is, I guess, city attorney report?
Nothing
Okay.
from me.
City manager report?
Well, I wanted, I sent an email out, but I'll just, I guess, reiterate or restate that our Public Works Director has given us notice, and we have posted for that position on the League of Oregon Cities website and the Oregon chapter of the American Public Works Association. We'll get it out to a couple of other places probably. So we are moving forward with that recruitment process. I know Ray's going to be here through at least one more council meeting, but I'll go ahead and say that, you know, he's been great to work with. I'm sure I'll say more at the next one. Try to embarrass him maybe, but anyway, that's all I have to report.
Okay, great. Let's go around the horn. Terry?
I just wanted to thank Ray for all the work you've done, the effort you put forward to the betterment of our city. Your sight into the future has been well appreciated because you have such expertise in this area. Knowing not just where we're at, but knowing where we can wind up and the best place to wind up has been very helpful, at least with me, a lot of my decision making. And I wish you good luck and best prosperous futures in the green acres ahead. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Here, man.
You're up. If
I just want to thank the council. I think I believe we are actually moving forward and gaining ground, and I'm excited to be a part of this, and I see a bright future.
Nice to have some positive meetings, huh?
Yeah.
Right. Mr. Snyder?
I just want to give my personal thanks to Ray for running a really tight ship and keeping this city on track and the things you do. I really appreciate it. If I can just make a general plug for something, this past weekend, my wife and I went to the Criterion Theater. The TMTO, is a group of teenagers, basically 12 to 18 years of age, and there's about 40 or 50 of them that are running a play called Newsies the Musical. It's one of the best things I've seen, and these kids will put professionals to shame. So it still has this weekend to go, so if you need something to do, you go see some of the kids that live in this valley, putting on a performance that you will not believe. Go see them. That's what it is.
Thank you. Stuart?
Like everybody else, thanks, Ray. Really enjoyed working with you. Timing is hard because I'm leaving and I feel like I have a lot of loose ends to wrap up with you. So I'll try to communicate with you and get those settled down. Let's see. Senator Jeff Golden is going to be holding a town hall here at the Civic Center, April 27th. They're going to send us out an invitation, so put that on your calendar. The Parks and Greenway Commission has set the date for the Easter egg hunt at April 20th. We also have the annual Bear Creek Stewardship Day that day, so 2 fun events that morning people can attend. And then Pollinator Appreciation Week this year is June 17th to the 23rd, and there's going to be a main event here at the Civic Center on the 22nd.
Thank you.
And then one more thing on the whole fire stuff. I really spent a lot of time working with some really amazing people that day, including Oregon Department of Fire and other, emergency management people. And I think we have a lot of questions that I'd like to get answered, and I'm just wondering if it's a good time to ask this now, or should I work with Aaron on those questions, and then we can kind of bring them back to council so everyone's in the loop.
If you want to work with me, and then if there's something that needs to come back to the council, we can do that.
That's it.
Councilor Williams?
I don't have much after being out and looking at the fire danger out there.
Angie actually joined me today out of the helicopter pad area.
Yes, and then back behind the Rose Court Apartments. And then driving back in there and seeing the little elderly woman coming out her door with all of the trees and the fuel that is right on the other side of the fence was more striking than just to know those fields are going to be up there, but definitely a risk you could see. And I too am sad about Ray. I got the email like, no, he does a great job.
Little stinker. Sarah?
I'll also give Ray some props. Thanks for all your expertise and for serving Phoenix. It's been really great to have you on, and I hope that you find something good. From the MPO meeting was canceled this month because the building actually, when we had the snowpocalypse, The building lost power and they had to evacuate. They had all staff had, anyway, it just seems so funny because it wasn't that bad,
yeah.
but in Central Point apparently it got really bad and they lost power. So they had to cancel the meeting. So the next one is on the third Tuesday of next month, or this month. Ooh, it's already March. Oh gosh. Yep, that's it.
Okay, cool. Well, at the latest RV-COG meeting, the big idea that came out of it, and it's gonna be implemented, is using funds that have been allocated to put cameras on top of mountains to look for fires. And they're asking for different agencies to allow them to dovetail on top of different towers that are already there. And they gave a good demonstration of how you can manipulate the camera from remote locations and see a fire, see it getting larger, and see, also track where the fire movement is going to help protect the fire crews that are involved. So that took maybe a good 45 minutes to an hour at the meeting. It was pretty interesting presentation. They did elect different, or new president and vice chair, and I was nominated to be executive member. I'm not even sure what that means, but they voted me as an executive member of the RV-COG. And what else? I think that's it. Tonight was a good discussion, nice positive meeting, and I appreciate you guys.
Can I just do one reminder for the volunteer fair this
Sure.
Saturday at 9 o'clock to the public to attend to find out the opportunities for volunteerism here.
Okay, great.
And then also to any city council members who would like to attend to
What time do you
cheer me on. I'd like for you guys to be there at 1:30 if you would, just start, go over your tables and things.
Okay,
Again,
I'll be there.
the date again? And
It's
the-
this Saturday, March
Saturday.
9th at 2 p.m.
Okay, great.
It's just an hour long.
And Stuart, what was the date of the Jeff Golden Town Hall that's being held here?
April 27th.
The 27th? Okay, thank you. Well, that said, I'm gonna adjourn the meeting, and thank you very much.
Oh, Aaron, I got some receipts for some iTunes cards. iTunes cards?
Yeah. Is it working?